In this video, I want to talk about the possibility of us seeing The Last of Us 2 multiplayer this year, and what specifically I will be looking out for as clues that this might be the case. Of course, Naughty Dog could just go ahead and announce the thing already. That way, I don't have to go into the comments and convince people that this is still happening. But in the meantime, we have to claw at the scraps we get, like scavengers surviving in a post-apocalyptic world. Dr. Pooplove here, and 2022 has already started off with some chatter surrounding The Last of Us Factions 2, most notably regarding the leaks from Tom Henderson, who seems to be seen as a reputable source to put some trust in. And he basically said that The Last of Us remake could come this year, as it is close to being completed, and that Factions 2 and A Last of Us 2 Director's Cut are also in that same window of close to readiness. Regardless of how accurate this may be, I will still take this with a huge grain of salt. He may be totally right that this is the plan, but plans always change, and he's talking about the end of 2022, so this far out, you never know what could get delayed or what could happen. So to help us internet Sherlocks out, I want to take a look at 3 things to look out for this year when it comes to Factions 2. And if you're as ready as I am for this game to finally come out, then hit that like button so we can spread this poop love all around. But let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to look out for, of course, are the job postings. But more specifically, how these job postings are getting filled and what types of jobs are popping up. Right now in America, we're going through this thing called the Great Resignation, where people are basically rage quitting their jobs in search of better opportunities. And this is hitting a lot of industries in various ways, including the game industry. As a result, some employers are having harder times hiring as more enticing opportunities are out there, especially ones that respect work-life balance a little bit more. If you take a look at Naughty Dog's job postings, some of these roles have been advertised for quite a long time. And I'm sure Jason Schreier's articles related to Crunch have not helped in the recruiting process. Regardless, Neil Druckmann tweeted at the end of 2021, and it clued us in that Naughty Dog has done some reorganization in part to address this and hopefully to become a more enticing employer to work for. But we have yet to see whether this is actually working, so I will be looking largely at whether roles that are listed will be filling up throughout the year, aka will they be disappearing. While I don't think every job has to be filled for Factions 2 to come out, because Naughty Dog does have a team in place. They aren't just sitting around waiting for people to fill some of these roles. I'm sure they have people stretching over to fill some of these roles until someone more permanent can come and fill it in. And this is supposedly a live service game. So in that sense, you likely can always be hiring for working on updates and DLC and all the rest. But I do think some notable positions that are still unfilled, like the monetization designer, will need to be filled before this game comes out. You would think they would need to roll this game out with a plan to make money, right? And so I'm looking for roles to be filled as a good indicator as to the pace of development, but also recently, Arnie Meyer, vice president of Naughty Dog, took to Twitter advertising these open roles, and he spent some time answering questions. And it gave us a few interesting little nuggets, like that Naughty Dog plans to evolve their microtransaction strategy, building off of improvements which they made with Uncharted's multiplayer, which I think should tell you that paid-only weapons and perks are not likely to be a thing. You should check out his recent tweets and replies for a few more interesting nuggets, but most notably for me is the response to this tweet from Jason Joseph, who's asking about whether Naughty Dog is going to have any marketing roles opening up. And Arnie replies that they are going to be having more additions to the communications team and that he'll be tweeting once those are available and ready to be promoted. And so it seems that Naughty Dog will be adding to their communications team and posting job openings for that. Personally, I really think that they need a dedicated multiplayer community manager to help cultivate and develop the relationship between Naughty Dog and their multiplayer community. It might help with some of the toxicity. But you would imagine that communication roles will be opening up when Naughty Dog is ready to actively start talking about the project. Seeing these roles pop up to me would be a good indicator that this game is close. The second thing I'm going to be looking out for is The Last of Us HBO show and what news we ultimately get for that. I think it's very likely that Naughty Dog's Last of Us projects will release around the time of the HBO show as a way for both projects to entice people to experience the story in both mediums. You can see this strategy from Sony already at play with the Uncharted Legacy Remaster being released a few weeks prior to the Uncharted movie. Interest in the game fuels interest in the movie and vice versa. Similarly, I think Sony plans to do this with The Last of Us HBO show and the related games that are in development. It's not clear whether The Last of Us remake or Factions would come first, but I imagine both fates are tied to the TV show schedule. And the third thing I'm going to be looking out for is the overall gaming landscape and how Sony may need to act or react within it. Recently, we had this big announcement where Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard. And this takes one of the biggest multiplayer franchises, Call of Duty, of course. It puts it under Xbox's control. With Xbox acquiring all these studios, they seem to be almost cornering the market in certain genres and certain beloved IPs. And one thing that I think will be interesting is how Sony kind of responds to this. Now, one thing I don't think Sony has to be worried about at all are their third-person, narrative, action-adventure, single-player experiences. They seem to have that pretty well covered, but Sony at the moment does not really have as much variety as Microsoft now does after all these acquisitions. And in particular, I think Sony is lacking in the multiplayer department. As a result, I think this puts a little bit of pressure on Sony to reveal what they maybe have cooking, just to keep the interests of those who are multiplayer fans but are within the Sony ecosystem. And so there are a few studios that are working on multiplayer projects besides Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog and Factions 2 seems to at least be the one that maybe is furthest along. So with that in mind, there may be some pressure to at least reveal or tease the development of this game. Now, the other thing you kind of have to look at is Sony's individual game release landscape and where that all fits in. At the end of January, they released an Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy remaster. In February, they have Horizon Forbidden West, and March they have GTA 7. Also, God of War is still slated for sometime this year, so we'll have to look within Sony's release schedule for this year to see, are there any opening windows where if this multiplayer is ready, it might make sense to drop it. And I've always been kind of the mind that this game will be more or less shadow dropped around the time of release. I don't know if this Xbox news will change anything in that regard in giving pressure to just tease some things that are in development, but at least the way that multiplayer marketing seems to be going these days is shadow drop, build up a bunch of hype to get yourself the biggest player base and kind of hope it takes off from there. And so those are some of the main things I'll be looking out for, but I guess we always have The Last of Us Day 2022. But what do y'all think? And if you want to see how Factions 1 is currently doing in this year, you should check out this video. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.